Hello, ladies, and welcome to our weekly Women's Wellness Circle, live right here inside Women on the Rise. I am so excited to dive into this topic today. And to start with, I'm curious if you're someone who tends to feel emotions that you can't really pinpoint where they're coming from. Or maybe you feel them so intensely and you're not quite sure what they're relating to or why you're feeling the magnitude of emotions that you're feeling. And perhaps you're someone who has been in this place for so long, maybe a year, months, or years, wondering, why do I feel these things so intensely? And it can oftentimes, at least in my own experience, start to feel like a burden or feel so overwhelming that you find yourself in a place of depression. And so, what we're going to be talking about today and really diving into today is looking at is what you're experiencing really and truly depression, or perhaps is it that you're a highly sensitive person? And specifically, we're going to be diving into human design and what your unique human design looks like, and how to look for some clues in your own chart as to whether or not this applies to you. So I am just thrilled to talk about this topic today because human design is something that I have been studying myself for, I think, the past about 3 or 4 years now. I've really been working on learning both about my own human design, but also about human design as a topic overall in an effort to help support my clients. And specifically because when I was dealing with depression myself, I went through a lot of times and a lot of questioning around, is this real? Like, where is this coming from? Like, my life on the outside, things look pretty great. I have a good family who loves me. I go to a great school. I, am well enough off. We always have food on the table. I didn't understand why I was feeling these super powerful, intense emotions. I didn't relate to them all the time. Wasn't able to pinpoint them. I would love to know if you can relate to this, if this is, something you've experienced, because this is really what we're talking about today. What emotions are you feeling are actually yours, and how you could know a little bit better about if that applies to you, or whether the emotions that you're feeling maybe are what you're feeling from your environment or the collective or the people that you're around. And again, how to identify which of those sort of camps you fall into using your human design. So if you don't know me already, I'm Haley Reese, and I am a mental health mentor and women's empowerment coach who helps women transform depression now. And my own experience with depression, as well as my more recent experience learning about human design, is why I wanted to bring up this topic today, because the truth is that, I still go through moments where I feel these, feelings and emotions that I can't pinpoint, or that feel really overwhelming and really powerful, and I don't always identify with, or can't, be like, oh yeah, I could see why I'm feeling that. And learning more about my human design, discovering my unique energetic blueprint, as I like to refer to human design, really helped me, one, to build a lot of awareness around what is not me, so that I could start setting up these healthy boundaries and these supportive practices for releasing what's not mine and taking ownership over what is mine, and using that as a way to take back my power so that I could use that information and that awareness effectively, instead of just pointing the finger at myself all the time time when maybe some of it wasn't even about me. So that's what we're really going to be chatting about. I'm so excited to dive into this with you. And to start us off, I want to show you how you can identify for yourself using your human design which of these two populations you fall into that we're going to be going into. So I actually have a resource handy to show you the human design chart. So this is just, from a human design book. I hope that you can see that okay. Let me know in the comments if you can see this is showing up okay. But what I want to show you here, and the area of human design that we're going to be focusing on most today, is our solar plexus center, which is also known as the emotional center. And that's why in just a post or two ago, I had all of you, drop your own personal human design chart in the comments so I could let you know, which of these populations you fall into. So just to point to it here. So this right here is our solar plexus center. It's our emotional center, and it's the center that we're going to be focusing on today. And I want to touch on something really quickly, because a lot of people, when they first start learning about human design, you start with your type, you start with your strategy, and you start with your authority. And that's how I started out learning about human design. And over the last year, one of my main mentors who I've been learning a lot of human design stuff from has shared with me about how, we have a lot of trouble accessing and fully utilizing and evoking the power of our type, of our strategy, and of our authority when we don't know about our centers, and specifically our open centers, because those are the centers that we are conditioned in by the external, by what is around us, our environment, the people around us. So when we're not in a healthy state with those open centers, when we don't know what's ours and what's not, it makes it really difficult. I had a notification popped up and it totally freaked me out. It makes it really difficult when we're very conditioned by the outside world to be super clear on how we can best use our strategy, how we can best use our authority, how we can best use our type. So that's why I'm starting here today as one of the first times I'm talking about human design in this group, as diving into one of the most easily, highly conditionable, if that's a word, centers, which is our emotional center. And one thing that I find so interesting about this center is that about half of the population is defined and half the population is undefined. And the way that you know this by looking at your own chart is if the solar plexus center is colored in with any color, it doesn't matter. If it's filled in, that means that you're defined. And if it's white or clear, empty, and doesn't have a color to filling it in, that means that you're undefined, and therefore you're susceptible to conditioning in that center. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this, and I would love for you to share in the comments as you're watching. Do you know which population you fall into? Do you know if you're emotionally defined? Do you know if you're emotionally undefined? Knowing that, and that's why I also encourage you to bring your chart to this circle today. It's going to be really helpful as we go through the rest of this information, so you know what applies to you and what doesn't. So starting with the emotionally defined population, because you're defined, what that means is that your energy in that center is yours. It is stable, it is consistent in its own patterns. And the way that the emotional solar plexus center works is that when you're defined, you have your own your own pattern of your emotional wave. You have a way that your emotions go in waves. You feel the highs, you feel the lows, and it's your emotions that you're feeling because you're defined and stable in that center. So let me show you a picture of what I mean when I say emotional waves, because we all have different types, or all defined solar plexus centers have their own types of waves and experience different waves. So I want to show you what that looks like. Yeah, Kate says, you told me today I have a defined solar plexus. So what does that does that mean all feelings I have are my own? Really great question. And we are going to definitely address that and dive into that. Let me just see if I can pull up that great picture of our waves. And kind of to touch on Kate's question too, you know, one thing that I'll preface our whole circle with today is that this one center, this one topic that I'm talking about today is not like the be all end all, like going to address every, or I guess it's not going to 100% clarify, are you depressed or are you highly sensitive? There are a lot of other things that can go into your design. And so at the end of today's circle, I'll be sharing a way that you can get more information on that you can go deeper with this if that's something that you're interested in learning about. So here is a picture of our emotional waves. Okay, cool. It looks like it's showing up pretty well. So there are different waves that we can experience. And the most important part for people who have a defined solar plexus is to get familiar with and learn about what your unique emotional wave is like. For some people, their emotional wave takes, you know, a day. Some people, it's like an hour. But you'll typically feel this like consistent up and down pattern of your emotions. And it can be really valuable to get in touch with that, because then you'll start to see, okay, I'm in an emotional high versus when you're in an emotional low. And the reason why this is so powerful is because it allows you to stop identifying with or making yourself wrong or the circumstances wrong or situations wrong. When you're, for example, in that emotional low, you'll be able to see, okay, I am in my emotional low right now. Let me not like take anything else happening to me too much. And then what happens at the end of your emotional wave, when you've gone all the way through it, is that you get to a place of just sort of stillness, clarity, where that's really the time to make those decisions, to, you know, decide how you're feeling about things, because you're through the highs and the lows and you're just sort of in the still waters now. So going back to Kate's question, you know, does that mean that all feelings I have are my own? On the whole, it typically does. It doesn't mean that you can't be like, won't be empathetic or compassionate, or you can't relate to others, or you can't like be in tune with other people's emotions. It definitely doesn't mean that, because I know plenty of emotionally defined people or solar plexus defined people who are very compassionate, very empathetic, who definitely, you know, relate to other people's feelings and can be in tune with that. What it means is that the feelings that you're feeling, the emotions that you are feeling personally are yours, and you're on that wave. And so while I think you can appreciate someone else's feelings, what you feel is your own. And that's really valuable to know, because it allows you, like I said, once you get in tune with your wave and know how that works for you, then you can get a lot of clarity on when the right time to make decisions is, on how you really feel about things when you've moved through that wave. So that's kind of the short summary here of the defined solar plexus or defined emotional centers. And again, those of you who are defined, it means that for the most part, your emotions are your own. What you feel is your own. Although, as I mentioned, you definitely can have that understanding and compassion and relation to what other people are feeling as well. You're most likely, just when it comes to moods, not taking in as much what other people are feeling, because you are consistent and stable. You are defined, like you are structured in your own way, and you're not susceptible to that conditioning like open emotional centers are. And so what I really want to dive into even further today. And what sort of spurred the topic of this call for me was this moment that I was going through earlier this week where I was on vacation in Tahoe, like this beautiful lake out in front of me. And like this, the new year was upon us, and I always love the new year. It's like a magical time to me. And yet I was feeling so heavy. I was feeling just like kind of on the verge of tears and not being able to really pinpoint it in my own little like tiny sphere of the world, because everything, I was on vacation. It felt pretty great otherwise. And then I was like, I reminded myself, like, Haley, you have an open emotional center, and that means that, chances are you're feeling some of the really big things happening in the world right now. And I'm not going to, I have a hunch many of you know what I'm talking about, or like, there's always, at least right now, seems to always be some, really terrible and tragic things happening. And so, I think some of that in particular was hitting me. And I realized, like, as I've been reflecting on it and what I want to talk about in this circle today, was that until I learned that I have an undefined emotional center and therefore am really susceptible to conditioning, which I'll clarify in just a moment, I took all these heavy emotions that I was feeling and couldn't pinpoint to mean that there was something wrong with me, to mean that it was my fault, that I was somehow creating this, and I was really taking on that burden and that responsibility. Because the thing about undefined emotional centers is that since that center is open for you, you're not stable, you're not consistent, you don't have your own structure or your own unique energy locked into that center. So therefore, you're extremely susceptible to conditioning from the outside world, from events or situations happening around you, from the environment that you're in, from the people that you're around. And all of that will inform sort of the emotions, the moods, the energies that you're feeling on a very regular basis, because not only are you super in tune with those moods, emotions, and feelings, but you actually are feeling them times 10. You're sort of like this, did you ever get those little like they were like supplement capsules, or that's what they looked like when you were younger, and you would put them in water, and they were like little sponges that would puff up into these like I always had the dinosaur ones. I hope somebody knows what I'm talking about, but they were like these teeny tiny little sponges that you would put in water and then would like balloon up into these much bigger sponges. And so much of the time when you are an undefined emotional center and haven't learned how to differentiate what are your emotions and what are other people's emotions, that's sort of what it's like. You feel like this sponge that's just soaking up all of these moods, all of these emotions, all these energies around you, and believing that they're yours, believing that you're responsible for them, that there's something inside of you creating them. And that's just not always the truth. The truth is that when we're in a place of being what they call like, they being like human design calls like a healthy undefined solar plexus or emotional center. It's when you are able to differentiate and clarify what are your emotions, like what is true for you, what are you actually feeling, what's emanating from you, versus what are all of the things that you're picking up out there from your environment, from the people that you're around, from what you're seeing, hearing, etc. And then having good tools and practices for ways to actually release those feelings and let go of the things that aren't yours. What this tends to do, and what my experience was at that young age, was I was like, as I mentioned, I was feeling all these heavy emotions, not realizing that they weren't always mine. And a bit more about my story is that when even still, like depression runs in my family. My dad struggles with depression. His brother struggled with depression. I believe that some of my grandparents did as well. And of course, like growing up, I lived half the time with my dad. My parents are divorced, for those of you who don't know, but I lived half the time with my dad. And so living in a house with someone else who struggles with depression, unbeknownst to me at that time, was having a massive impact on my own moods and my own emotions, because I was taking in my dad's moods and his emotions, feeling them times 10. And, this poor little girl that I was had no idea about human design or how any of this works. And I was just totally overburdened and burnt out by feeling the intensity of this all the time, in addition to, whatever else. But that was like, I know now that that was a really key factor for me. Anyone that you're really close to, if you're an undefined emotional center, you're probably going to feel really strongly. Even now, the biggest sort of showing of this, or like illustration of this for me now, is like, even now there are times when, like, this last year, I worked with my dad pretty closely to support him in his business, and I was at his house a lot. And, I had a lot of this awareness, but being in that environment, I still, I had to be extra conscious of how can I be sure to release these emotions that aren't mine, to let it go, and to be aware when I'm in that time, like, this isn't all me, this isn't all what I'm feeling. So now that we've really defined, first of all, like, are you a defined emotional center? Are the things that you're feeling, the moods that you have, the feelings that you feel on a regular basis, are they yours? Or are you an undefined emotional center, and are you susceptible to that conditioning? So if you are an undefined emotional center, also known as the solar plexus, as I've mentioned, I want to share with you a few quick practices that can be really important for you, or really beneficial for you, I should say, to help release those things that aren't yours. The first is just a simple practice of using this affirmation or mantra, and I love this one because it's a great visual mantra, which is, it's I am a screen, not a sponge. So going back to that idea of, like, when we don't know that we're taking in other people's emotions and ballooning up like a sponge, using this mantra with yourself when you're feeling that is reminding yourself, I'm just a screen, not a sponge. Or you could say, like, I'm a mirror, not a sponge, to show, like, okay, I'm just reflecting what I'm taking in from the environment around me. So that's the first one I find really helpful. The second one that can be really beneficial is to make sure that you are giving yourself a little bit of time every day. I think at the end of the day is a great time to do this, where you are just all by yourself, like, don't have any, just like having that solo time to go and actually release those emotions, to let go of anything you picked up during the day. I mean, there are so many practices for doing this. I encourage you to use the one that you resonate with, or that fits best for you, you have experience with. Personally, what I love to do is to just take some nice, big, deep cleansing breaths and use my intention as the way to release, like, when I'm exhaling, that, like, the other energies I've picked up throughout the day. So using that mantra, using this practice of creating that time for yourself, are two of the most helpful things I can recommend to you or share with you to do if you're an open emotional center, if you're undefined in that center and picking up a lot of other people's energies. And again, the main sort of reason that I felt like this was important to talk about today was because I know now that so much of my depression, so much of the anxiety that I've experienced, and just all those heavy, really overbearing feeling emotions that I've dealt with pretty much all of my life, have a lot to do with being an open emotional center, have a lot to do with the fact that I'm picking up on other people's emotions and amplifying them within my own system. And we're not really like our open emotional centers or undefined solar plexus, we're not really built for that level of charge, that level of emotion. So that's why these practices of letting go of that and making a conscious effort to do that for yourself on a daily basis can be so healing and energizing. So I'm definitely going to be sharing a lot more about human design, here and there throughout this group, because it is a big part of how I've discovered, how to overcome my own depression, how to transform it in a way that's powerful, and how to use these parts of myself, like being highly sensitive, like being overly emotional, as that I once thought were like these flaws and these things that I thought were wrong with me, how I now see them as like, oh, that's actually a superpower that I have. That's actually a gift that I have. And so that's why I love human design, why I'm going to be talking about a lot more. And if you are ready right now to go deeper and learn more about your unique human design, what your system looks like, how you work best, how you make decisions best, how you can process your emotions best, how you can really gain that emotional mastery, because that's at the core of it. I would love to invite you to reach out to me, shoot me a PM, send me a message, or comment below to let me know you want more resources, and I'd be happy to share with you whatever types of resources you're looking for, whether it's additional readings, programs, or I also offer one-on-one human design readings that I'd be happy to do with you as well. So I hope that you found this as interesting and informative as it has been in my own life. This topic is so fascinating to me. And I'm really interested in sharing more with you and helping you see how your own human design can relate to, your experience of depression in a way that allows you to empower yourself further to transform your depression, to release it, and to really gain that emotional mastery and reclaim your power and create the beautiful, happy, fulfilled life that you desire, because I believe that's why most, if not all of you, are here. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments. And like I said, if you're looking for more resources, shoot me a PM or drop a comment below, and I will definitely help you find exactly what you're looking for when it comes to that. So before we wrap up today, I would love for you to just drop the number one aha moment that you had from being on our circle today. Thank you for all those hearts. I really, truly hope that this information empowers you as much as it has myself. And I really look forward to sharing even more about human design with you in this group, at our circles, and in any other way I can if you reach out to me personally. So before you go, just drop your biggest aha from today, because when we share those things, I always see it sparking ahas for other people or deeper insights for others. So you're really doing a service to your sisters when you share those things. So I love you all so much. I cannot wait to see you next week for our weekly Women's Circle. And I have some exciting guest speakers coming up in the near weeks to come, in the weeks to come. I have two coaching friends who will be joining us. One of them is an amazing marriage coach, and the other is an awesome parenting coach. So if that is something you're looking for support around, especially as it relates to how you're feeling day to day, I can't wait to announce those and have you join us for those circles. But in the meantime, I just love you all so much. I hope your new year is off to a beautiful start. I can't wait to see you next week, and have a beautiful week in the meantime.